most famous physical therapist on the internet.
Hi, I'm Brad Heineck, physical therapist,
I'm Chris the Pharmacist.
and we are here today to do a video on coffee, the good news, the bad news, and how much is too much, all from recent research. And we're very happy to have Chris the Pharmacist here to take how caffeine and coffee and how it works with our bodies and give us the most updated recent research. You've done a lot of homework on this, haven't you, Chris?
A little bit.
Yeah, his little bit. Believe me, it's complete. Bob is on a coffee break today. Just kidding.
That guy.
Okay, Bob. Sorry. Before we carry
Sure,
on,
Bob.
should we?
I think we should.
The giveaway.
All right.
All right. We do have an excellent product for the giveaway today. And just go to our website, bobandbrad.com. You can go to the giveaway section, go to Facebook. It's pinned to the top of the page. Also, you can go see Twitter, Instagram, and the TikTok. But those don't have the giveaway on it. So, with further ado, we should mention what the product is for the giveaway.
All right.
A far infrared heat system, and this is a very nice system. The beauty of far infrared is, unlike your typical hot pack that goes skin deep, few millimeters, this goes 2.36 inches deep into the muscles, into the joints, and they're built well. Bob and I have been using ours for about 3.5 years now. We love them. So anyways, enough of that. Let's get on with the topic at hand.
All right.
All right, Chris. So coffee, first of all, it is one of the most widely consumed drinks throughout the whole world.
Yeah.
It's right up there in the top 5.
Oh,
I think you did the research.
It's up there. There's everybody drinks it. I mean, 80% of the planet. So you got 7.8 billion. So
Right.
time that's 80%. So that's a large number of people. About 65% of Americans drink it on a regular basis. So
If you haven't noticed, Chris is a numbers person. He knows his stats, which is also nice. So I have some coffee here. I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
It's empty.
I'm a nerd. So
So the history of coffee, very briefly, has it been around for a couple hundred years?
It's been around
Millenniums?
for thousands of years. I mean, basically, there's a fancy, cute little story about a goat herder. His name was Caldy. So, Caldy, the goat herder. And the story goes that he was watching his goats, and basically, these goats were eating these berries, and he observed that they just wouldn't sleep at night. They were jumping around and all crazy. So he figured out what they were eating, brought it home to his wife. Wife took some and was like, "Oh my gosh, this stuff jacks me up."
Yeah.
And so to the point of they're like, "Gosh, we should probably tell somebody." So what do you do in Ethiopia in the middle of the 850 AD? You take it to the monastery. So they had an abbey or a monk try it, and basically at first they kind of scoffed at it, and then they were like, "Well, maybe it's not so bad. It kept me awake during my prayer session. This is a good thing." So that's the story of how they essentially came up with coffee. But realistically, the Persians, Ottoman Empire, Ethiopia, I mean, all those areas seem to have had all around the same time been trading coffee, went to the 1500s, and then it was more or less started to expand towards Europe. And, in the 1600s brought to the United States, and here you go. We have
Folgers and everything else.
Everything, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so again, let's talk about, because we're going to refer to 1 cup of coffee, because we're going to talk about the good news, the bad news. Let's start with the good news, but when we refer to a cup of coffee, let's define what that is according to most studies.
Yeah, coffee ranges all over the map, and that's one of the problems is nobody knows what they're getting in a cup of coffee. So to standardize it, you'll assume that 1 cup of coffee, which would be, we'll call it 8 ounces, contains 100 milligrams of caffeine.
Okay, 8 ounces, and I'm not even sure if this is exactly.
And that looks more like 6. I mean, if we were to pour it out, we could get a volumetric measure, but
we'll hold on that.
But I mean, so I mean, the average cup of coffee, and again, it's going to vary, but we'll just assume 100 milligrams. And
100 milligrams of
caffeine in the coffee.
Okay.
So, and because caffeine in a lot of cases is the stimulant that causes a lot of the effects, but not always. I mean, maybe we have to ask what's in coffee. And coffee's got a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, it's going to have some essential vitamins, a few of your B vitamins, like B6, pantothenic acid, B5. And then it also is going to have a little magnesium, potassium, and of course the flavonoids, chlorogenic acids. So there's a lot of fancy stuff in coffee that does a lot of good things for our body. And as we get into some of the health things that it helps, we'll kind of break it down.
All right. So the big thing, everyone is aware of the caffeine.
Yep.
So caffeine has good effects And maybe some bad effects.
Good and bad, and that's kind of one of those things where you want to be aware of it with your doctor, guys. It's one of those things where if you have a heart condition, an anxiety condition, probably not the best thing to be taking.
Sure.
So because it can actually, because of what caffeine does, it's got kind of an adrenergic effect. It kind of jacks you up a little bit.
Sure.
So we do have to be kind of careful with that for our
Right.
friends that maybe shouldn't be on it. So always check with your doc.
And I think we were talking before, typically the symptoms that are bad are oftentimes, you'll know it. You're jumpy, you don't feel right. You know, if you're that person, you know, just stay off of it or stay away from it. The other thing I was going to say is, now I can't remember what I was going to say, Chris. Here, carry on.
Okay. But you know, it's the interesting thing is, you know, there's probably a genetic predisposition to people that actually drink coffee.
That's where I was going.
It's metabolized, you know, by a specific enzyme in our livers. So if you're playing score at home, it's a C1A2, but which will glaze everybody over. But anyways, that particular pathway in our bodies and our liver, when people drink coffee and are really bothered by it, we all have those friends. Oh, I can take a cup of coffee and I just go right to sleep.
Sure.
You know, I'm not that guy. People don't like me on caffeine, so it's a bad thing. So there are other people that it metabolizes a lot longer.
Sure.
And so from that standpoint, they naturally tend to avoid it because they recognize that the symptoms of taking too much coffee makes them jittery, makes them jumpy, raises the heart rate, makes them anxious. So it's one of those things where we want to try. You know, they know how to avoid it. So although there's actually more and more accidental caffeine overdoses now being seen in ERs. So
from coffee
and/or more likely energy drinks. So we'll sidebar that for another day.
Right.
But if we're sticking with coffee at hand, I mean, those are the negatives.
Let's get back to some of the good things because that's what I wanted to get into.
Yep.
I sidetrack things, but
that's
so.
Okay.
What are, like we talked about fitness?
Yes.
People who are marathon runners, people who are doing some of these aggressive,
swimmers, rowers,
actually taking caffeine in what form?
Yeah, well, usually just a cup of coffee, and basically when coffee hits your lips into the system, you're going to start to feel the effects within about 15 minutes. Maximum response about 45 minutes to an hour, and then it lasts for about 4 or 5 hours in your system.
So we're talking about that rush, that buzz from the caffeine. So how does that relate to making you faster?
Well, it's kind of interesting. They've done a lot of studies on endurance athletes, cyclists, marathon runners in particular, but they've also looked at swimmers, and we'll talk a little bit about team sports. But marathoners and cyclists in particular, caffeine, when you take it before a race, tends to increase your effect. Cyclists have been putting out more power, so they test their muscles.
Right.
And you could probably speak to that a lot more effectively than I could. But they're putting out about 17% more power on caffeine. So and they have, you know, some of the studies show like 200 milligrams before, 400 milligrams before, 100 milligrams before. So all of the studies,
like 1 to 4 cups of
1
coffee.
to 4 cups. And that's kind of that safety range that we'll kind of talk as we get into the health benefits. It's that range of 1 to 4. We're not going to really exceed that because beyond that, it just gets to be too much. But to get the aerobic output and, you know, for a swimmer, a bicyclist, or a marathoner, you're definitely going to improve your times. They did studies with guys that were trained and they improved their mile time. So they've improved their cycling times. They've improved their marathon times.
You know what I'm thinking, Chris?
Yeah, we should take it before a race.
Well, but I'm thinking there's going to have to be potty breaks because that's an issue.
It is. It is a mild diuretic. So, but for a lot of people, it's kind of interesting. If you're a seasoned coffee drinker, that effect tends to go away. Kind of looked at that a little bit because, you know, you're putting liquid in, but you're also putting liquid out. But the effect seems to negate itself. So dehydration, what was once believed to be a big issue with coffee drinking, is not so much because coffee is mostly water. It's just beans, filtered water.
Right.
And so that's how it works. So it's pretty slick.
Well,
so it's not as bad as we think, but you know, probably have the time. If you're going to use it before a race, you want to save it for race days in most cases because caffeine, with it's in coffee, you develop a tolerance. So you will lose some of the benefit from it if you're doing it every day to train.
Sure.
So, you know, test it before you take a race because some people, you know, you go out, you could have a bad day if you miscalculate the dose or what have you. Find what works best for you, but then save it for race day.
Sure.
But it is going to help you to improve your performance. That's almost guaranteed.
Another thing I understand, coffee can actually the caffeine can complement some pharmaceutical meds. Is that accurate?
Yep. There are actually several prescription medications that do get affected by coffee. So we have to be real careful with that. Your pharmacist certainly, you know, if you're a coffee drinker, you should let them know up front because then they can kind of tailor make something. There's a certain muscle relaxant where also if you're having coffee with that, it actually competes with how the drug is actually metabolized, raising the drug level, and you're putty. I mean,
you
You want to avoid
caffeine with
that.
muscle
Yeah, the
relaxants.
one that I'm talking about is tizanidine. So you would know if you're on it, but you have to be real careful with that.
Sure.
There's certain antibiotics that actually goes the other direction. So the quinolones, so things like Cipro, and so it's used commonly for a lot of people.
So it's good to combine that? No, it's not.
Nope, these are things that are bad.
Okay.
So basically, if you take ciprofloxacin and you had a cup of coffee, it can really amplify the caffeine effect of the coffee itself.
And these are antibiotics.
Antibiotics for certain infections. So again, I think the biggest thing is to take, when you're talking to your doctor, you go in, you're sick, and you're not doing well, and you think you're going to get something. Let them know if you're, somebody that actually uses coffee or caffeine, because certain drugs can affect how it's used. There's certain antidepressants, certain medications used for arthritis, so that we have to be careful.
What about on the other side? There's some medications that are helped if you take coffee or caffeine?
Well, I think that just there's disease states that are helped by having coffee, and because there's the good things in coffee, they have the flavonoids and they have the magnesium, the B vitamins. And so it's interesting. There's a litany of different health conditions that actually can be improved. And actually there's a wide variety of studies, like almost 500,000 people study, retroactively analyzed, shows coffee makes you live longer. So it's kind of interesting. So really, when we look at it as overall health benefits, most people, when you look at diet aids, the number one ingredient in most diet aids is caffeine. So when
you're
people
talking about diet pills?
Yes.
Okay.
But people can lose weight on coffee. There is a thermogenic effect from caffeine that's in the coffee itself.
So thermogenic, you're going to get hotter?
No, not quite. It helps your body burn more calories. So it basically unlocks your ability to break down fat cells and actually convert it to energy, which conversely, when we're talking about improving our physical performance, they think that it's carbohydrate sparing. So what happens is you break down your fat cells for your energy first, and then your carbohydrates later. So that's why marathoners and cyclists seem to do better when they have caffeine, which is kind of the opposite of what a lot of us were taught a long time ago is, we want a carbo load before a race because that's our quick energy reserves. Well, it seems like caffeine seems to spare that. And that's why those endurance runners and endurance athletes tend to perform better when they have coffee before a race. Kind of interesting. But going back to kind of the weight loss aspects, that one's a little iffy because what happens with a lot of us that drink coffee is a tolerance does develop after about 90 days. So we do, so it's one of those kind of a quick hitter. So when they're a quick hitter, basically what happens is the effect kind of loses itself after 90 days. And over the course of a year, all of a sudden those weight loss gains, they kind of gradually come back.
Yeah.
It's not to say that you don't still get some of that thermogenic effect, but if you're not changing your diet and you're not exercising the way you should, that weight loss balance kind of goes away.
Now, before you mentioned there are some disease processes that studies have shown it actually helps. Can we talk about a couple of known ones of those?
Yeah, so diabetes type 2. So that's the one that's non-insulin dependent, although some people can use insulin with type 2 diabetes.
Is that the one you get with age or you're born
That's
with?
the one that we get with age.
Okay.
So that's the one that we kind of develop if we kind of let things slide. We're not eating as well as we should. We're not exercising as well as we should.
Sure.
So it's one of those things where it shows pretty eloquently that it can reduce the risk by about 7% if you're a regular coffee drinker. And again, what's regular? 1 to 4 cups a day. Know yourself, because too much can be too much, and too little is not enough. So we have to be careful with that. But you never want to go over 4 cups because that's that 400 milligram threshold of caffeine, and that's where it can get pretty jumpy for people's hearts or anxiety levels.
You bet.
But yeah, it does seem to help you to process sugars more efficiently. It helps with insulin resistance. So it does seem to do a very good thing for diabetics for the most part. So talk to the doc. But if you're going to be using coffee, but it's certainly something that could have a preventative effect on type 2 diabetes.
And so the big thing is, again, I want to emphasize, if you are on meds or you're going to become, put on meds, make sure you talk to, if you say, I forgot to tell my doctor I drink 3 cups of caffeine a day, is that going to affect? When you go to the pharmacist, make sure you mention it, because that's part of the pharmacist's job is to double check and make sure that there isn't something missed.
Yeah, because there's lots of stuff that could get by the goalie, so to speak, if we're not told, because we don't. If you don't tell us, we don't know.
Right.
Same with your doctor or your nurse practitioner, anybody that sees you. Want to share. Sharing is good.
Sure. The other thing is, what about things like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's?
Well, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's are 2 of the biggest neurological problems that people face. And actually, studies show, it's interesting, there's coffee and decaffeinated coffee. So in Alzheimer's, which is the one where we kind of get forgetful and we kind of lose things, and it's a very sad, debilitating neurological disease. Drinking coffee, interestingly, seems to have a strongly preventative effect with Alzheimer's. So that 1 to 4 cups of coffee range can lower the effects quite a bit. So
and this is from studies.
Studies over hundreds of thousands of people retroactively. So it's the proof's there. It does show it. So it seems to unlock certain nerve pathways in the brain, and it seems with some of the neurotransmitters that it involves.
So it's a prevention thing, or once you have it,
I think it's more
lessens?
preventative. So I mean, I would say so. You probably would want to be starting to drink coffee at an earlier age. You know, when we're 70, and also we start cranking down the cup of Joe to try and reverse our Alzheimer's is
Sure.
probably not going to work.
Yep.
But it seems like if these are people that have been lifelong studies, and they've done studies from 30 to 50, and that's kind of where that sweet spot for a lot of these studies have been picked out, which is why they tend to, for diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, liver disease. So these are all things that coffee is very beneficial for.
Okay.
But jumping back to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, interestingly enough, you heard me say decaf and
Sure.
and regular caffeinated coffee. In Alzheimer's, decaffeinated coffee will still actually help you. So the flavonoids and other things that are in there seem to work with the brain chemistry to help to work with those pathways that are associated with memory. Whereas in Parkinson's, which is kind of a motor disorder where we can get those shakes or our
Right.
muscles don't quite work the way we want them to, it's contingent upon the caffeine to help with that. So people that drink coffee, they will notice to a lesser degree that their symptoms will be alleviated when they have Parkinson's.
Sure.
But usually at that point, it's too far gone. Parkinson's probably starts 30 years before you figure
I
out you
see.
have it.
Sure.
So again, as a preventative measure, you'd want to be drinking coffee well
Right.
before the problem starts. And without genetic testing, you really wouldn't know that. But it's
And I just do want to emphasize those people with personalities, kind of like mine, or well, if 1 or 4 cups of coffee is good, maybe 8 cups a day is even better.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then-
there's a lot of us that subscribe to some is good, more is better, and that's again the exact opposite. I mean, the upper limits of coffee or coffee, intoxication, which is really caffeine intoxication, can be quite dangerous. It can put you in the hospital. ER visits. So
Sure.
you'll see that more with energy drinks and usually kids, but it still can happen with adults. So you do have to be mindful of that.
And that's because the energy drinks are
A
more concentrated.
Much more concentrated across the board. So, I
Okay.
mean, the fatal dose of caffeine is 10 grams. That'd be like drinking 100 cups of coffee.
Sure.
You on your best day could never do that. I mean, the other side effects, and that's the interesting thing with coffee drinking. It's generally self-limiting. So at some point you're like, ooh, I've had too much. You just naturally tend to stop because you don't like, it's uncomfortable for your heart, because that's one of the first things you notice is your heart starts
Yeah.
really pounding,
Sure.
and you get a little jumpy. I mean, somebody comes through the door, you're willing to jump or be afraid or something to that
Sure.
effect. So usually we're going to back off.
Okay. So let's say, because I notice that with myself, I can have 1, 2 cups, and then it doesn't taste so good anymore, and it's like, why am I even drinking this? And I'm done for the day. But how long does that caffeine stay in your system?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, the law of averages, unless you're on certain medications, it's going to be about 4.5, 5 hours, and then it starts to peter off.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, insomnia is kind of a big thing. I mean, we got a sleep deprived nation, so there's no
Sure.
two ways about it. So probably cut off the coffee around 2 or 3 in the afternoon if
Okay.
you're trying to be in bed at a reasonable time.
Sure.
That'll certainly help. So it kind of peters off and runs out of gas.
Yep. Well, I know, like my mother, she's been drinking coffee all of her life, and she's 84 now. She can drink a cup of coffee at 10 o'clock at night and go to bed.
Oh, I love
That
it.
doesn't bother me a bit. But
Nope.
again, that's because she's been drinking it for so long.
Yep, there's definitely a tolerance. She may just have the genetic structure that says that, hey, I can handle this.
Yeah.
Or maybe she's just used to it because she's been drinking it for 50,
Sure.
60 years.
Sure. So I'm hoping that that's not a bad thing for her.
No, it shouldn't be. And if anything, it might actually, you said 84. That's some serious longevity. So
Yeah.
it may be adding to it.
84 and a half now.
84 and a
And
half.
she's
There you
doing
go.
well. All
There
she
you go.
takes is a little high blood pressure medication. She's an incredible woman.
Yes, she is. Nope, I know June. So, but that said, I do think, and a lot of the other studies show that actually helps you to live longer. So, I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that unless your doctor directly tells you no, or if you're on certain medications that could, create a
Sure.
problem with caffeine, I think it's okay to drink a cup or 2 of coffee a day.
Yep.
So I think it's pretty reasonable. Couple with standing medical conditions, of course, would have us avoid it.
Right. Well, boy, there isn't too much bad news, and if it is bad, you should know it
You
just
kind
by
of,
your symptoms.
you just naturally kind of quit. You just like, it's not for me.
What about people that have AFib?
AFib. Now that's actually a no-no. So
Yeah.
that's going to be one of the ones that we do have to be careful with. That's one of the cardiac conditions.
So atrial fibrillation.
Atrial fib, tachycardia. I mean, these are things that
all heart problems.
a lot of the heart problems,
Yeah.
I would tell you to probably avoid it. Although, it's interesting because some people that have mildly elevated blood pressure or
Yeah.
hypertension. Studies used to say, oh, we got to avoid coffee at all costs. We're actually finding that, it only raises, if you're a tolerant coffee drinker, it only raises your blood pressure by about 2 to 3 points, which is really insignificant.
So that's different. The blood pressure versus heart
Blood pressure
rate.
versus, yeah. So if you're talking like AFib, that's an absolute hard pass. You are not going to do that. We're going to put the brakes on that one.
Right. All right. I tell you what, I got to get a cup of coffee. We're going to cut this off.
There you go. All right, drink up, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much, and hope we, you learned something. And well, whatever. Let's get some coffee.
All right, sounds good.